Coming up, the Cleveland Cavaliers and Donovan Mitchell tie the series at 1 apiece with the Boston Celtics. Has that Cleveland star proven himself to be worthy of 1A status in Brooklyn? We dive in coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use promo code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a deposit match up to $100. And Doug, I'm willing. I've changed my mind. I will pay up to $100 to trade for Donovan Mitchell and bring him to Brooklyn.
It's been funny how this is kind of shaken out, right? So we've talked so much about Donovan Mitchell this season. I'm sure we're gearing up for an off season of talking about him more as well. That will probably actually ramp up, I suspect, as soon as the Cavs are inevitably eliminated from the playoffs. I don't think they're going to win the championship. Not a hot
sad vibes. Exciting at first, but if you're a Cavs fan, don't listen to the start of the show. You're not going to love it.
But what we're seeing kind of unfold here in the playoffs is a couple things. And one is Mitchell related, and one kind of piggybacks on our talk yesterday about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Anthony Edwards. And that these lead guards, these like super dynamic lead ball first lead guards, are really kind of to some degree dominating the playoffs. So you throw Luka in there as well. I mean, that he's kind of he's of a different type, but and Mitchell, after a really this is an understatement, a really surprising win over the Celtics in Boston last night, where he goes for 29 points on 10 for 19 shooting. And you start to think to yourself, I mean, does he have it in him to actually sort of be a 1A on a team? You know, is he good enough? Like, if it's him plus one other really, really great player, is that championship level? I mean, it's got to be part of the discussion where just how well he's played, and also his ability in these playoffs and at times in the past to kind of come up like really big when the lights get bright. And I think that is another thing that we're seeing from these playoffs too. And I meant to throw Brunson in there as well when I was talking about just like these lead guards that end up sort of like taking over games for their team. Sure. That's been something of a theme so far. Mitchell fits right in.
You know, the irony too, because you just mentioned Jalen Brunson. One of the things that I was thinking about was for a player like that, he had a great season. He's obviously been amazing in New York, but they move on from the Pacers, let's assume, and they go to play, we assume, Boston. All of a sudden, in my mind, it's like, oh, well, a smaller guard. Okay, watch out for Jaylen Brown getting switched on to him. Watch these defensive players start to shut down these guys. Now, Donovan Mitchell is bigger and stronger and has more of a physical presence, so I think that makes a difference in this. But I'll be honest with you, like, it's not to take away from it. I'm not surprised by Donovan Mitchell and how he's played. Like, this is exactly expectation, and I think it's funny because I've seen this start to bubble up, and I get it. If you're a Nets fan, if you're an NBA fan, you're watching Donovan Mitchell have a phenomenal playoff series. And then more specifically, I mean, let's be real. We're all shocked they were able to win a game against Boston. So you're championing a guy who's showing you that he can lead a team against one of the best team in the Eastern Conference and get a win. That said, it does not change the conversation about what is the worth for him in a trade. And we talked about this the other day. Is the value going to start to skyrocket? Is the asking price going to start to go up? I'm not trying to take away from it. I love him. You and I say this all the time. If I could have Donovan Mitchell on the Brooklyn Nets, I would love to have him. But if you tell me it cost X amount of picks, and if we talk about having to give the players as well, which fans seem to always jump past here, it just does change the team that you have afterwards. That said, I can look at the supporting cast in Brooklyn and look at the supporting cast, especially without Allen right now in Cleveland, and say, okay, I would not have thought the Donovan Mitchell-led Brooklyn Nets would be able to win games against the Boston Celtics in the playoffs. Obviously, that can be a reality based off last night.
Yeah, and it's one game, and we'll see what happens when they go back to Cleveland, right? But the key is, and when we compare personnel between these teams, it's like Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, and how's that compared to Mikal Bridges and Nick Claxton, right? Like who's the better group? It's I probably would frankly shade on the side of Claxton and Bridges in that case. And you just kind of go down the line with how else the rest of the team be built, assuming they're able to keep all these guys in an eventual potential Donovan Mitchell trade. And this is where it also gets a little tricky too, because look, we're on the same page. Would we want to add Mitchell? Okay, the thought experiment you always need to do with these situations is would you pay $0 for Donovan Mitchell? You're like, oh, of course. Okay, great. We've established that. Perfect. Now, would you pay all of your picks from now in perpetuity for Donovan Mitchell? You're like, well, no. Okay, great. So now the price, now we've established the bounds.
Here we are.
Let's try to figure out where the price is. And what always ends up happening with these timing situations is, and I think we talked about this a few episodes ago, but is that because the ideal thing here would be Mitchell just rides it out till free agency and then kind of picks his spot, and the Nets are set up with cap space in 25 because that's when he'd be a free agent. The Nets are set up with cap space in 25, and they can take him under cap space and like a la KD and Kyrie, and now all of a sudden they don't have to expend. Now those other picks and assets can be used for the other guy, right? And now you're really cooking. But the thing is, these guys get antsy. They want out. I don't blame them. They want out of a situation that they don't think they can win the championship in. And then you are, to some degree, not even to some degree, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul to bring in the guy, but also shipping out the very things that would help that guy win later on down the line. Right? Like, and these are the problems, for lack of a better word, I guess, with these kinds of situations. And Mitchell, I think, might end up exemplifying what can end up happening here.
Yeah, and the curiosity becomes in that situation. Donovan Mitchell, okay, give up everything to get him. If you're pro that move, then your theory is do everything possible to make sure that you end up still having Mikal Bridges here. Now you have Donovan Mitchell, and as we know, Mikal Bridges is a guy everybody wants to play with, and Donovan Mitchell is proving he's an elite talent. So then when it comes to free agency, you'll have the money down the line to just say, who is superstar X? Come play here. We're very attractive. We have these pieces for you. We're ready to win if you come and step in and become the number one. So there is that path, and it can make sense. I just don't know if that price point, as we said, 0 is totally worth it. Everything we have is not. The somewhere in between seems to be rising, rightfully so, based on what we're seeing from Mitchell right now. There's also something else I picked up on across these NBA playoffs that I want to get into here in a minute when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets supporting cast and just how attractive they may be, plus that little sneaky team down in Miami sniffing around Mitchell as well. We'll get into that in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Look, Prize Picks is daily fantasy made so easy. All you're doing on Prize Picks, you're picking more or less on different players and they're against the Prize Picks projections. You're going, like for NBA, you're going more or less on points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals. MLB, you're going more or less on strikeouts, home runs. You're piling these all together. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as few as 4 correct picks. You turn $10 into $1,000 if you didn't want to do the math yourself. Basketball, hockey, MLB, it's all that. WNBA too. They got everything here over at Prize Picks. I got a couple for you over on Prize Picks for Friday evening's games. We got a little Minnesota and Denver action. Let's go a little less on the Jokic, 12.5 rebounds. I don't like it. He's having some trouble there against some of those bigs. Let's go more on the Anthony Edwards, 24.5 points. And let's go more on Aaron Gordon, 0.5 made 3-pointers. Just make 1 3, Aaron Gordon. That's all you got to do to make me correct on that one. Just 1 lousy 3-pointer. Prize Picks made fantasy so easy with this. Look, you're not wrangling with salaries. You're not going against sharks in the water. You're going more or less in those Prize Picks projections. You turn $10 into $1,000 right now. You're going to download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDON for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, you download the app. Use the code LOCKEDON first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And when you're done with that, head on over to our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, style. eBay Motors has you covered. Over 122 million parts. For your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP, bring home those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers.
All right, so as we continue the Locked On Nets episode, reminding you, get us on YouTube, over on X at Locked On Nets, at Doug Norrie, not Adam Marmbrecht. Gosh darn it, we are just a full spectrum service for you, the Brooklyn Nets fans. The thing about it is, Doug, we talk about Donovan Mitchell and beating the Boston Celtics. So first on the supporting cast piece of it, one thing that I think I'm becoming acutely aware of in these playoffs, and it includes watching OKC last night as well. You know, athleticism matters in the NBA, Doug. I don't know if you're aware of this.
Come on.
And sometimes when I think back to watching the season, we talk about like Mikal Bridges' struggles, right? Can't really create his own space, get to the basket on his own, take guys off the dribble. I did the Rolodex of the net supporting cast, and I thought, you know, not a lot of guys that I would say rank in the upper echelon of NBA athleticism. And it's an interesting thing about talent versus, I don't know if it's just athleticism, but there's some disparity there in the way the roster is currently constructed that I actually think is a detriment if we talk about getting to a place where Donovan Mitchell is an outright free agent, or just thinking about the way they're currently constructed. I do think they lack something there where sometimes you can watch players that you would say are either on par or slightly below some of the Nets roster in terms of talent, but they overcome it because they can get to the rim a little bit easier, because they have the on-ball skills that we just don't see from a lot of these Nets guys.
Yeah, like basketball is intricate on one level, and it's also very easy on another level, right? And so it's intricate in that, like, there's lots of things moving at once. It's very fluid. It takes a trained eye to kind of see what's happening in real time with how players are sort of, you know, working within the framework of a system or not, depending on it. So that's the hard part. The easier part is, hey, if you have one guy who can beat his guy off the dribble, then everything gets easier. Like, and that is, and so you're like, okay, it needs to kind of all work within a system. But if you don't have that first thing, it's going to be really hard. You need someone who can break down the defense, at least at the point of attack, or, you know, like a la, like, or sort of an Embiid or Jokic, where it's like, hey, good luck handling these guys if you don't bring a double, because they're going to do, you know, they're either just going to body you into the basket, or they're going to see over everything and see every angle. Right. But after that, you need a guy who, especially at this level, playoff style, you need a guy who can beat his man. That's it. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of starts there. And what we're seeing, to kind of go back to the beginning for these playoffs, is the teams that have that guy that can do that, there is a down chain, a cascading effect to everybody else. You beat your man. So if it's like Brunson, right? He beats his guy. They try to trap him a little bit, and they're going to trap him probably even more now that OG's hurt. Yep. But if they don't trap him, what's he do? He beats his guy. He gets in the lane. He stops. He gets fouled, right? And then he goes to the line, or, you know, you don't bring a double. He shoots a three. Or you bring two guys and he passes out of it, right? Yeah, so I'm going long-winded here, but like that's with every guy. SGA, Anthony Edwards, Donovan Mitchell, like they can beat their first guys. When they do that, you now have like the world's just sort of your basketball oyster now. Like you can do so many things: drive and kick, take it to the basket, get fouled, right? Like you have so many more options because you're essentially 5-on-4 at that point. The Nets don't have, like, outside of Cam Thomas. Kind of, they don't have a guy. They don't have a guy who could do that. So you defined it as athleticism. I think that's correct, but it's like this athleticism that breeds the ability to now do other things. The Nets had so few of those guys, and that's why it's like the offense is stagnant. Yeah, nobody can beat their guy.
Yeah,
and that's kind of it.
And it was so funny to watch, and really, I saw it in the Cavs game as well. You're seeing it across the playoffs, and that's what it is when you're a playoff team. The Pacers show this, even if they're not going to be a team that moves on, you know, beyond the second round. All these teams show when you can just penetrate the lane a little bit, but more than one guy can do that. Now all of a sudden that the passing sequences, you go, man, how are they able to move this ball around the perimeter with such ease? Well, because everyone is shifting defensively, everyone's collapsing, everyone's trying to get back out, everyone's trying to switch. When you think back to the Brooklyn Nets during the season, yeah, they're passing the ball around the perimeter, But the defenders are generally just taking 2 shuffles to the right and saying, okay, now what do you want to do? I'm right in front of you.
I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but Rick,
Yeah.
how many times did we see Mikal Bridges start and stop a drive? Because he would try to get past his man. Right. The guy it was easiest thing ever for him just to slide his feet in front of Mitchell, in front of Mikal, and that drive would stop. And now there's 9 seconds left on the shot clock. And now what do we do?
And there's no one to kick to.
Yeah, and there's nowhere to go, and they never had to bring a double. And this is what the problem Bridges had all year was he couldn't beat any guy. He could never get to a spot. Now you're really out of time, right? Because the time is another part of this too. If you try these actions and they don't work, now you're up against the shot clock too. And so when we just saw it over and over. So sorry to interrupt you, but to bring it back to the Nets for a second about what they didn't have. It's you can kind of translate it back to what we watched all season.
So now let's bring it back to Donovan Mitchell and the potential of, is he worth it, right? So let's just assume that at a minimum the Nets, well, I don't say assume because who knows, doesn't really fit or what you would want to do constructing the team. But does a Donovan Mitchell, Cam Thomas with Mikal Bridges, Nicholas Claxton gets brought back on the contract? Can you envision it where what Donovan Mitchell is capable of makes life easy enough for other players on this roster, maybe specifically for Cam Thomas? Because that's actually the funny thing about this. You'd say, well, we're going to have a small backcourt and, that's going to maybe create its own little problems, but those would be your 2 best offensive weapons, obviously, Donovan Mitchell and Cam Thomas. The weird thing there is it creates opportunities for Cam Thomas potentially. It makes his life easier. But will it dramatically change anything for these other players? Because the one thing we saw towards the end of the season was Mikal Bridges actually evolving. We thought reverting back to Phoenix. No, it's actually the next phase of his career. 3-and-D wing. I'm out there taking high volume threes and playing hopefully some solid defense. I wonder if that would be enough and if you would see enough of that impact, or as we know, talking about, okay, now next offseason when the Ben Simmons contract comes off, now who's the next guy we need to bring in here to make this that version of the team that can take that next step? Because in the landscape of the NBA East, you put Donovan Mitchell onto the Nets as currently constitute, take nothing really away from them. I'm still going to sit here and tell you, going to be a hard battle, obviously, against the Celtics, against the Knicks, against the 76ers if they retool a little bit. It doesn't dramatically change what I think their ceiling would be. It raises their floor. And it's such a pessimistic way, I guess, to analyze this, to say, I don't think it makes them an Eastern Conference final or finals team. And therefore, I don't think you can trade almost all of your assets to go get this guy, even if it's the precursor to another move.
Well, if it's the precursor to another move,
I mean, you'd have to name the move later, right? You'd have to tell me I know you can't, but it's you'd have to tell me within a reasonable scope, who is that other guy you're bringing in? Because obviously Mitchell as an elite number 2 or 1A would certainly make a difference. But who is that guy that's going to be available that the Nets are going to be attractive for? And maybe there is that player. Maybe there will be.
Actually, I do have an answer for this, and it might not be the one you think. I'll get into that here in 1 second. First, tell you about our friends over at Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. We already talked about that at the beginning. Now, Monopoly Go, here's where you can team up with your friends for time tournaments. You work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. There's so much to get over on Monopoly Go. You can grab those unique stickers. You trade with friends. You complete those albums for big prizes. Grab some those new playing pieces, not just like the old school Monopoly ones. They really leveled up the playing pieces over on Monopoly Go. Grab some of those emojis. Taunt your friends. Who doesn't love taunting their friends? They're smashing the buildings. They're heisting their vaults. Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every single day. It's got constantly changing tournaments and challenges, ton of mini games like digging for treasure. And there's always timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win. Oh, those rent frenzies. Always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench. Go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Monopoly Go, game on.
All right, so as we wrap up the Locked On Nets episode, and Doug's going to come in with his response about the precursor being Donovan Mitchell to what and why it's probably worth it. That's going to be the surprising answer he's going to give. I know that for sure. But give that first, because I do want to give a caveat to what I just think should still be the plan for the Brooklyn Nets, even if they are falling in love with Donovan Mitchell.
Okay, so there's a general NBA sort of landscape question to ask yourself, right, when it comes to following teams and building teams at this point. And that is, if you are resigned to the idea that it's very hard to win a championship and that only one team gets to do it every single year, but that there is incredible value in being good and interesting for many months, kind of right until the end.
Yep.
then you can start doing a different equation for yourself on sort of like who needs to come later. So the example here would be like the Knicks, right? The Knicks, I don't think anyone in their right mind thinks the Knicks are going to win the championship. Has this Knicks season been a massive success? I mean, of course. It's been amazing. Like if you're a Knicks fan, like this has been one of the best seasons ever. No matter what happens from here on out, right? Lose every game from here on out, and every Knicks fan would easily sign back up for this season again, right? Brunson's been amazing. The guys are playing incredibly. Josh Hart, if the seems like if you take him out for 1 minute, he's going to die. You know, he plays every single game. And like, so I think that is where, and it, I don't know, is it a loser mentality? I mean, maybe, but there are 30 teams. Only one gets to win the championship every year. We've defined success on a spectrum, right? Based on sort of who you have and how exciting it can be. And if you can talk yourself into be a good team, punch above your weight for some, for some series, make it exciting. Would Nets fans sign up for that? I think there's a large contingent that would, right? And I think that if we're asking ourselves that question, does Donovan Mitchell make the team more fun and more exciting for the next couple of years? Would we be doing a Friday, May 10th episode about the Nets in the playoffs rather than other teams in the playoffs? I think we'd all sign up for that. And I think that's probably what you're at least asking for a little bit with Mitchell.
Yes. So that's why I kind of knew it, because it's true. We talk about this all the time. You know what's worse than being a bad team or not interested, whatever. It's being irrelevant, right? Not being in the playoffs, not being a team people want to talk about. And then right now the Nets aren't an exciting team to talk about, short of could they go get a Donovan Mitchell?
They're the most boring team in the league. They're the most boring team in the league. It's like, I'm being serious. Like they are the most, right now as currently constructed, they are the most boring, unexciting team in basketball. Because the other teams, what?
More than the Wizards?
Nah, maybe the Wizards. Maybe that's the one. Maybe that's like the one other team. But every other team, at least you can like point to a guy who might be good and superstar good and young. Maybe you want to say that's Cam Thomas, or you're like down the line, or we have a draft pick coming up, or blah, blah, blah. The Nets have none of it. They're the most boring team in the league. I'm sorry. That's just the case. Mitchell would instantly change that.
Now, so I agree with that 100%. So here is what I should have said, closing out segment number 2. Not about, that it's not going to move the needle enough or it's not going to raise the floor enough. It is. But I'll go back to the premise of, okay, this past season was disappointing. And everything since the trade deadline a season and a half ago when they moved Kevin Durant has been disappointing in terms of what we thought the return was going to be and what those players were going to look like. I agree with that. Now, some people would say you pay more, you pay everything right now to get Donovan Mitchell so that when you want to go get that star, he's here and you can point to him and you say, this is it. There's an element that I think is a little bit telling from fan supporters or fan analyzers that say you have to go get him now, because if he gets to the open market and he opts out, well, then you got to worry about Miami. You got to worry about Team X, Team Y, Team Z. Well, now you're saying that you don't believe that Mikal Bridges is the attractive player that everybody wants to play with and that Brooklyn is where players want to come to. That is a risk. However, I would still probably say, as much as I would like to have Mitchell on the team, then wait it out. Purgatory for another year is miserable. But if you can wait for it, and then you can just have the Simmons contract off your books, and you can just go like they did with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, just pay the money to bring in the stars, something they've proven they can do, then you'll still have all of that draft capital to continue to make other moves, supplemental moves. Maybe it'll cost you something along the line, but then you can continue to not only construct the roster in the short term to be competitive, but also have a asset haul that affords you to develop some young talent in the background, because this window you're about to create is not going to be what the Oklahoma City Thunder think they might be walking into right now, or what the Minnesota Timberwolves have with Anthony Edwards emerging as one of the best players in the league now. You're going to be getting a 27 to 28-year-old kind of core, 28 to 30, and it's going to really have a nice window for you for a few years. That may not be championship level, but you're at least going to be there on the doorstep. So finding a way to do it without sacrificing everything you got back from Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving trades, I think still makes sense to me. Understanding, I've never been, and I think you as well, never been against having Donovan Mitchell, but I think the way in which you go about it and how willing you are just to throw everything at it, that to me sounds like a fan base that is desperate for something good. Because guess what? The last version of the Superstar team, didn't satisfy that itch at all. As a matter of fact, it actually irritated it and got under the skin, and now you feel like you need a cure and you're desperate for it.
I mean, can you blame the fan base?
No, not at all. I'm desperate for
it's been years of this misery. And by the way, I mean, how hilarious is it that the year after the Nets totally implode, the East is like a total dumpster with these playoffs. Like the Knicks Knicks are barely hanging on. The Pacers aren't really that good. Like the Celtics just somehow lost to the Cavs. The Cavs just kind of aren't that great. And now it's like, yeah, we just chose. It's just 1 year late, of course. So if you're go ahead.
No, I'm going to pivot here. Finish your remarks. I'm to make it.
Okay, yes. All I was going to say was that you really can't blame the fan base here. I mean, it's been just years of disappointment, years and years and years of not just disappointment, but massive disappointment. Like, because the expectations were the highest. The Nets were championship favorites multiple years going into the season, and at many points during the season. Yeah,
and never came close. That's the problem.
What's that? Say it again.
They never came close. You know what I mean? Never even sniffed it. It wasn't like, oh, you made the Eastern Conference Finals and then someone got injured and you missed it, or you made the finals.
I know people will say like, oh, Durant's toe on the line. They still had another series and the championships to go through. Like that, I mean. They were not like that. Wasn't just seal it, set it, and forget it. If he makes that shot, then they're like they still. I mean, yeah, it was the Hawks. They probably would have won, but I mean, I don't know. They were decimated at that point. They had no one left. And maybe like, oh, well, Kyrie could have come back or Harden, would have gotten healthy. They still had 8 wins to go against teams that were going to be trying real hard to beat them. And so I'm with you. So I know what you're saying. Like they're not close. They really weren't that close. They were the favorites. But that doesn't matter for anything when you get to the end of it. So when you're talking about disappointment, you can't blame the fan base. Be like, hey, a playoff series win wouldn't be the worst, right? Barclays rocking. Donovan Mitchell looking good. Some of the supporting cast, playing up to their level. Would we sign up for it? Again, just to go back to what I said before, I'd much rather be talking about that than, I just called the Nets the most boring team in the league. So, like, I think I'd happily pivot off that mindset.
Doug, would you like to be a playoff team playing exciting basketball or the most boring team in the league? Please take your time with your answer. We have plenty to get to. So I will say it'll be fun to watch this because the one thing that you mentioned is this will be my closing thoughts as we continue to watch these playoffs. It is game to game a little bit. OKC beats Dallas the first game. You're like, oh, watch out. Going to be dark days in Dallas. They come back. They tie it up on the road. Cleveland, we don't know what's going to happen. Certainly being 1-1 and getting home court advantage is exciting going to Cleveland. The thing that I took away, which I hate to water down the Cleveland win, is I looked across at Boston. And maybe it won't matter. They'll win the series 4-2 like they did last round. But in the moment, I was like, gosh, dang it, man. You are way too talented of a team to be sitting here losing a game at home against the Cleveland Cavaliers led by Donovan Mitchell. And I said that I hinted at this the last episode. Jaylen Brown feels like the more important player for that team than Jason Tatum because Jason Tatum, as your superstar, can kind of come and go a little bit. And I think you've highlighted this about the Knicks to be playoff broad here. Every single player on that team is considering the idea of dying on the court physically to win basketball games. And that mentality and that energy is something you usually get with newly hungry teams getting into the mix, whereas some of the stalwarts that feel like the ultimate goal here is getting to the finals, they sleepwalk a little bit. They make little mistakes. They hit speed bumps. So it's fascinating to watch how these are unfolding here based on teams and where they are on their timelines, right? Teams that have gotten ahead of the curve here. They're eager. They're hungry. They want it. And we're seeing some of those things play out in both conferences that are very exciting to watch.
And by the way, you put it, we'll get out of here now, but you put it really well. It's like watching the Knicks play with the ferocity at which they play, where like that, even that would be something that you could get on board for. It's like just
Brooklyn grit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we saw none of it. We just saw none of it. Like it was just. And now look, not to the Nets' credit here, you see none of it from most other teams. I think we're seeing it now from the Knicks. I think to some degree we're seeing it with the Timberwolves, right? Like this absolute, all out, under no circumstances can we lose kind of mentality. It is rare, but again, like I don't know, sign me up for that too.
And by the way, the last comment. Some teams, some cities, some areas of the country are different. They're built different mentalities, whatever it may be. Donovan Mitchell, his mentality in Brooklyn and bringing I think he has that type of energy to him. That's something that Brooklyn specifically, East Coast mentality, I think would respond to really well also.
Totally. All right, we're going to get out of here. Much appreciate
Let's get
everyone
outta
that's
here.
rocking with us through the postseason here. No Nets, no problem. It's all right. We're coming at you 5 days a week, all through the postseason, all through the draft. By the way, Nets don't have a draft pick. That doesn't matter for us. We'll be 5 days a week during that too. That's just that is just how
What a
we
joke.
roll.
We're not going to go 5 days a week during the draft where the Nets have no incentives.
Yeah, come on. What are you, crazy?
It's
Like, what are we, what are we, losers? All right, we're going to get out of here. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. Subscribe over on YouTube.
Doug's going to tell you this quote, what it's from, and who said it. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
Oh, my goodness. One Mr. Coach Taylor, Friday Night Lights, the greatest football series that's ever, really one of the greatest series of all time. And obviously, one of the all-time great American poets. We'll be back in tomorrow or next week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball.